Hi everyone and welcome to English for You. I'm Pat.
And I'm Ben.
So today we're looking at our literature article for this month. It is the detective story Murder on the Orient Express. So Ben, are you a fan of detective stories, mystery novels, that kinds of thing?
You know, I really do like detective stories, although I have not read much. I used to act in a play of Sherlock Holmes.
Oh yeah,
I used to be Sherlock.
You were Sherlock?
I was Sherlock, so
wow.
I do like the detective scene.
That's a coincidence. I have been Watson.
Oh, no kidding! Wow.
Yeah, I did a radio play here in Taiwan a few years ago for ICRT, and I was Watson.
Wow, what a coincidence.
Okay, so we have Holmes and Watson here in the studio. Have you read some of the other, you must have seen like the Sherlock Benedict Cumberbatch one?
Oh, great actor. I've seen that, but Agatha Christie, I'm not too familiar with her work, actually, surprisingly.
I've only read a few of her stories and seen a few of the shows. Yeah. I'm kind of lucky because this one, I listened to a radio play version of Murder on the Orient Express sometime in the last year, and I also saw the recent movie version with Ken Branagh. As Poirot, as the detective. It was a pretty good version of the story. I've seen better versions in the past, but this one was pretty good. So in this literature article, sometimes we talk about the story for 2 days, and then we talk about the themes on the third day. This month, however, we're going to spend all 3 days talking about the story because there are a lot of small details, a lot of mysteries, a lot of kind of clues that point the wrong way. In fact, there's a load of stuff we couldn't even include in the article because this story is just full of details and false clues and kind of people getting the wrong idea about who the real murderer is and so on. Anyway, so let's read through day one of the article and find out what happens.
Reading.
Murder on the Orient Express. Belgian detective Hercule Poirot is in Istanbul, Turkey, when he receives an important message. He must go to London at once. Luckily, Poirot is with an old friend, Monsieur Boque. Boque manages an important railway company and gets Poirot a ticket for one of his fanciest trains, the Orient Express. Poirot boards the train with Boque. Shortly after, he is approached by a strange man named Samuel Ratchet. Ratchet seems nervous. He's been receiving letters from someone who wants to kill him. Poirot refuses to help him, though. He has heard that Ratchet is an evil man. Later, Boque moves Poirot into a first-class cabin. Unfortunately, it's the one beside Ratchet's, and soon things take an unusual turn. That night, the train gets stuck because of heavy snow. Poirot is woken up by a cry coming from Ratchet's room. The train's conductor knocks to ask if anything happened. A voice from inside says, "It is nothing. I am mistaken." Poirot goes back to bed, though he can't help but feel that something does not add up.
So the story begins by describing who the main character is. It says Belgian detective Hercule Poirot. So it's sometimes pronounced Hercule. It depends on which version of the story you read. Hercule Poirot is in Istanbul, in Turkey, when he receives an important message. So we describe him as Belgian. Something that's Belgian is a person or a thing from Belgium, a small country in northwest Europe. The word Belgian can also be used as a noun. Someone is a Belgian, in which case it always means a person, but with the adjective we could say he's Belgian, we could talk about Belgian chocolates, we could talk about other Belgian things. So basically, Hercule Poirot is from Belgium.
That also brings us to a word we just saw too, detective. Now, detective is one who searches for clues for a case. Now, in terms of a case, we could mean when somebody has committed a crime or something against the law, like a murder or some sort. Now, normally detectives look for people who have done something bad and try to hunt them down. Now, these are normally big cases like a robbery, and they take a lot of time. Now here's an example sentence. The detectives searched the house for fingerprints to see who stole the expensive lamp.
Okay, so yeah, if you read some of the Poirot stories, he was on the police force in Belgium, and then he kind of becomes like Sherlock Holmes, the sort of detective who doesn't work for any police force, but people could just employ to solve a crime. He's a private detective, and he gets a message. A message is some kind of communication from one person to another person who can't be contacted like face-to-face directly. Messages are often written, but they could be recorded or told to one person who then speaks it aloud to another. Now, these days, we often use the word message to mean like an online written communication, like a line message or a Facebook message.
Yeah, it's definitely different from back in the day. A message could be a letter.
Yeah, or some kind of telegram or something like
that. Exactly, that's what I think. So how technology has advanced. Yeah, so anyway, the article, he must go to London at once. Now, at once, we see this phrase means immediately. Now, this means he must head there soon. Think of a sense of urgency as saying you have to go to the bathroom at once. When you have to go, you just have to go.
That's right. So that's the message. He has to return to London. We assume there's some kind of other criminal case he needs to get involved in. But London is a long way from Istanbul, and this is in the days before planes, so he can't just fly back. But as the article says, luckily, Poirot is with an old friend, Monsieur Bouc. Now, Monsieur, it's spelt with an N, but it's pronounced Monsieur, is the French way of saying Mr. And it's often written, when you see it in a novel, just as M with a period. Now, Monsieur is a little bit more polite than Mr. So in France, somebody might say, excuse me, Monsieur, maybe it's a waiter or something, he's being polite. And in this way, it's kind of more like, excuse me, sir, than excuse me, Mr.
Yeah, that is interesting. So in the article, Bouc manages an important railway company and gets Poirot a ticket for one of his fanciest trains, the Orient Express. Now let's look at this one word, fancy. It's an adjective. It's used to describe something that is expensive or related to an expensive way of life. So when we say fancy, think of nice silverware, expensive lamps, and nice buildings and furniture and things like that. So here's an example sentence. The fancy furniture in the room made the place look like it's fitted for a king.
And this is a very fancy train. I think people can still take this train.
Yeah, I think so too.
Basically from either Paris or even London these days, across the whole of Europe and out into, parts of Asia, really. It's a really interesting idea that you stay on a train for several days. Have you ever thought of doing something like that?
No, I know India has those really fancy trains, but that would be really interesting. That would be quite a journey.
Yeah, I thought about it. I traveled across Canada once, but it was we didn't have enough time to do the whole thing on a train. Yeah. Otherwise, it would have taken a couple of days. So we flew from Vancouver to Toronto and then got trains across the kind of central regions there.
Yeah, I really like that because America doesn't have too much of these fancy trains, so I'd really like to see a European kind of or Indian one of these trains. That'd be nice to go on.
Okay, so we see in the article that Poirot boards the train with Bouc. Okay, board here is a verb just to mean get on the train. Okay, so there he is. He's on the Orient Express, ready to leave. But then we kind of start with the mystery side of what's going on.
Yes, in the article, shortly after, he is approached by a strange man named Samuel Ratchet. Now, shortly after, this means a little later. This means that in a minute or two, something has happened. Now, we can say shortly after the test, the teacher told us to put our pens down. Or shortly after the soccer game, we sat on the field and stretched. It's used to say what happened right after doing something.
That's right. So he gets on the train. Maybe he doesn't have much time to kind of get used to things. And then he's approached by this man. Here, the verb approach means to talk to a person for the first time about a request or about an idea. We can also use the word approach to mean to come close to a person, usually with the intention of talking to them, introducing yourself, asking for help, and so on. Basically, Ratchet comes and sits down with him and says, hey, I need a word with you. I'd like to talk to you about something. Here's another example sentence. I approached my boss about taking a 2-week vacation the following month.
So let's dig a little deeper. So in the article, Ratchet seems nervous. Now, nervous is an adjective, and it means feeling a bit worried or afraid. Now, we can be nervous when we have to perform in front of others or while taking a test that's really important to us. Yeah, it's not really used in a negative way, but as to how we naturally react when we care a lot for something. So here's an example sentence. I felt nervous while performing my song in front of the whole school. Yeah, you might feel a little jittery. You might feel a little tense, just nervous. Yeah.
Exactly. You might feel nervous before a big test, before a job interview. But, Ratchet, what does he feel nervous about? Presumably, it's not something like a school test. And in fact, in the next sentence, we find it is something a lot more serious. The article says he's been receiving letters from someone who wants to kill him.
Oh, no.
Yeah, okay. So, now, normally you might think, right, this is the detective story. You know, the guy who's being threatened, he's receiving death threats in the mail, comes to the detective and says, help me find out who's sending me the letters, find out what's going on, protect me, Mr. Detective. Exactly. But this isn't what happens here.
No. So the article says Poirot refuses to help him, though. What? He refuses to help him? That's quite interesting. Why would he refuse to help him? Well, first let's look at this word refuse. It means to deny something, to reject. Now, when we refuse something, we say no to it. For example, we can refuse a person from entering the school if they are not a parent or student. It is a firm no. So here's another example sentence. We refuse to let the man join our party because he was not wearing the appropriate clothes. Yeah, because sometimes you might need to wear a suit and you could be missing that. Yeah.
So Poirot is saying no, like, I'm sorry, person who is receiving death threats, I am not going to help you. But why? Well, we see in the article, he has heard that Ratchet is an evil man. Okay, now, we don't get time to explain this in the article, but in the story, Poirot kind of sees how Ratchet interacts with people, he hears some stories, and Poirot kind of forms the impression of Ratchet himself that this man is not a nice man, and that's what we mean by evil. An evil person likes to hurt others, or they just don't feel bad when other people get hurt. So an evil person would be probably very selfish. They would only care about themselves, and they will basically hurt other people and do anything they feel is necessary in order to get what they want. Like, they are the most important people, nothing else matters. And that's the kind of idea Poirot has about Ratchet. He's that kind of person. Here's another example sentence with evil. The evil queen put poison in the apple and gave it to Snow White.
Ooh, does seem scary. So let's look at the article. It says later, Boak moves Poirot into a first-class cabin. Now, we hear this word a lot, first class. It's an adjective. It means a section of seating on an airplane or train that is more expensive. For example, the seats might be more comfortable, and it might include better snacks and drinks. Now, first class costs more, but are also pleasing all in all. So yeah, airplanes, we always see first class sitting in the front, and it's just like a normal, better experience.
Have you ever sat and gone in first class?
You know what? I did go in first class. That's because they were missing seats. A lot of people didn't book the first class seats, so they moved some of us to the first class.
And you got in first class?
And I got in first class.
Oh, come on. I've never even been in business class.
Oh, yeah.
How was first class?
It was not all that better. I mean, it was comfier seats, a little more space. Yeah. But all in all, it was okay. Just
different food, better stuff.
Better snacks. They'd always give us snacks, a little, maybe half an hour or so.
Oh, so okay. Yeah, it's something that's kind of on my what we call a bucket list at some point to go, that's it. You know, for this trip, I'm flying in first class. You know, for whatever reason, whether it's because, I'm going somewhere really nice or I just want to be comfy. Something like that. I will do it at some point. A first-class train cabin will be a little different, but again, it will be bigger. You won't have to share it. The bed will be comfier. You'll get extra services and so on. And Poirot, if you read the stories, he is quite a fussy person. He does like to be comfortable. He does like everything to be perfect. So he would really want a first-class cabin. However, as we see in the article, unfortunately, it's the one beside Ratchet's, and soon things take an unusual turn. So we start this sentence with the adverb unfortunately, which indicates that something bad has happened, either that it's bad luck or that it's just a bad thing that has happened. It's something we can't do much about. It's just the way things are, and it's not great. So he doesn't want to be next to this evil man Ratchet, but he can't do anything about it. That's just unfortunate.
Yep, unfortunate. Now let's look back at the article. It says that night the train gets stuck because of heavy snow.
Yeah, an important point, as we'll see in day 2. Yeah. So we now see that Poirot is woken up by a cry coming from Ratchet's room. We use the phrase wake up to mean stop sleeping. But when we use it in the passive voice in the article, is woken up or was woken up, this indicates something has woken us up, like a noise, an earthquake, something like that. We didn't wake up by ourselves, something caused us to do it. And in this case, a cry, so a loud noise, someone may be going like, ah!
Exactly, yeah. So the article says the train's conductor knocks to ask if anything happened. Yeah, he might be curious. Oh, what's that sound? Yeah. So the conductor, it's a noun. Conductor is the person who's in charge of the train. Now, this is a bit different from a pilot, which is someone who actually drives an airplane. A conductor is responsible for the train and do things like collect payment or check passenger tickets, but they do not actually drive the train.
Yeah, that's right. So Poirot then hears a voice from inside says, "It is nothing. I am mistaken." Now, I'm going to note this because we don't put this in the article, but it is true. The person speaks in French.
Oh.
Now, Poirot understands French because they speak French in Belgium, but you have to wonder, can Ratchet speak French?
That is a good question.
And if he can't, who replied in French?
Yeah.
We'll leave that one open. We'll leave that question there.
So anyway, back to the article. Poirot goes back to bed, though he can't help but feel that something does not add up. Yeah.
Now, before we look at what that means, let's look at the grammar point for our article, can't help but, followed by a verb. Now, if you can't help but do something, then this is what you do. You kind of feel there's nothing else you can do, and you do it whether you really want to or not. So if you can't help but feel something, that is how you feel. Maybe even if you know you shouldn't feel that way. So if you see somebody with a nice car, you can't help but feel a little jealous, even if you know you shouldn't feel jealous just because someone has a nice car. Now, with this grammar point, we can change the way it's said to be can't help and then the VING form. So can't help doing, can't help feeling. This means the same as can't help but do, can't help but feel. Same meaning. So you see someone with a nice car, you can't help but feel jealous. You can't help feeling jealous. It has the same meaning. So here's another example. The cookies were so delicious that James couldn't help but eat another one. Or the cookies were so delicious that James couldn't help eating another one. And as you can see with this grammar, we can change the form of can't to couldn't if we're using the past tense. Now here, Poirot can't help but feel something doesn't add up. But what do we mean?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. We often hear that something does not add up. Now, this means that something is missing. It's like something does not feel right. So think of it like a puzzle. If some pieces of the puzzle are missing, the puzzle cannot be complete. Thus, it's a feeling that, hey, there's a missing piece. Something does not add up. Yeah.
Okay, well, we're going to find out exactly what that is in day 2, but to have us guess about it, let's go to today's For You chat question.
For You chat.
So the question is, why might Poirot think that something is wrong? So something doesn't add up here. Something's not right. But why might he feel that?
Is it because he heard a big scream, a big noise, and thinks something is wrong? Yeah, what else?
That has to be, if you're woken up by somebody in the cabin next to you screaming, you're like, hang on, that's not right. Yeah. And we know that the guy next to him has been receiving death threats in the mail. So kind of go, okay, let me add this up.
Yeah.
Somebody is getting death threats. That same person cries in the night. What's likely to have happened?
Ooh, that's a good
maybe
one.
someone killed him.
Yes.
Or attacked him. Then there's the extra point I mentioned. You guys may, if you read the article, you won't know this, but if you read the book, the person in the room speaks to the train conductor in French. But could Ratchet speak French?
Oh.
If not, then that means somebody else was in the room with Ratchet. But who? Obviously, an interesting question. There are, at this point, Poirot has met a lot of people on the train, and he knows that a number of them speak French, and a number of them have their own kind of little strange personalities or interesting reasons for being there, or, you know, they all have their own little stories. And he has some already getting suspicious about some of them, and we'll kind of get to some of that in maybe day 3. It's something we don't have time in the article to go into detail a lot, but yeah, if you were sleeping in a room and you heard a scream next to it, would you go and find out what happened?
Of course, go check it out, see what's wrong, what's happened. Yeah,
he hears the conductor saying, "It's nothing. I am mistaken." Even those words are strange. What are you mistaken about? Like, why would you cry and go and then go, "I'm mistaken"?
Exactly. There has to be a deeper meaning or a deeper reason.
Did you think I saw a rat? I saw a spider? You know, I saw a wolf outside the train in the snow?
Something more serious. Yeah, it's not something too...
It's not like I'm mistaken, like, I couldn't find my glasses and that's why you yelled.
You kind of tell a serious scream, yeah.
Exactly. Well, we'll find out what has been going on in day 2. But for now, we're going to say goodbye. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Murder on the Orient Express. Belgian detective Hercule Poirot is in Istanbul, Turkey, when he receives an important message. He must go to London at once. Luckily, Poirot is with an old friend, Monsieur Boque. Boque manages an important railway company and gets Poirot a ticket for one of his fanciest trains, the Orient Express. Poirot boards the train with Boque. Shortly after, he is approached by a strange man named Samuel Ratchet. Ratchet seems nervous. He's been receiving letters from someone who wants to kill him. Poirot refuses to help him, though. He has heard that Ratchet is an evil man. Later, Boque moves Poirot into a first-class cabin. Unfortunately, it's the one beside Ratchet's, and soon things take an unusual turn. That night, the train gets stuck because of heavy snow. Poirot is woken up by a cry coming from Ratchet's room. The train's conductor knocks to ask if anything happened. A voice from inside says, "It is nothing. I am mistaken." Poirot goes back to bed, though he can't help but feel that something does not add up.
Vocabulary Review. Detective. The detective arrived at the crime scene and began looking around. Fancy. A meal at this fancy restaurant costs at least 4,000 NT dollars per person. Approach. Michelle was waiting for the bus when she was approached by a man who asked for directions. Nervous. Becky felt nervous as she walked on stage to play the piano in front of the audience. Refuse. Benny offered to give his mom a ride on his scooter, but she politely refused. Evil. The king was an evil man who beat his servants and let his people go hungry.
智慧小补帖
Unfortunately. Conductor.
以上节目是由活用空中美语制作，活用空中美语杂志，请洽询全国各大书店。如欲索取试听教材，请来电02-2364-4000。 02-2364-4000，或上网查询，网址是 www.english4u.net www.english4u.net